influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us today for another episode of Going Ringside. So glad you could be with us. Before we move forward, I want to encourage you to go look at last week's episode where we had a couple huge interviews. One, the brand new AEW champion Swerve Strickland was with us, had a lot to say about the new era in AEW with him as the top guy. Also, we talked to the juggernaut in the world of bare knuckle fighting. He was been a world champion, one of the best bare knuckle fighters on the planet. Joined us. Lorenzo Hunt is his real name. So just a great episode. You want to go back and take a look at it right now in the archives. It was a fun episode, and it was our most downloaded episode on YouTube platform, at least, last week. So it's definitely one people are talking about. Got a lot of national chatter on what he had to say specifically with respect to some comments from Grayson Waller. So a lot of exciting stuff last week. But today we got a lot of exciting stuff going on too. First, we have a special guest with us today, a guy you may have not heard of for many years, but certainly was a big name in his day in all three major companies, WCW, ECW, WWE. That would be Big Vito. If you remember Big Vito, he's part of the FBI, Full-Blooded Italians, a great stable there in those WWE years, coming out of the Attitude Era, going into the Ruthless Aggression Era. Also was doing that in ECW, similar gimmick in WCW, so he's seen it all. He's been a name. He's been someone who's immediately recognizable by fans all over the planet, so we're going to be talking to him because he's coming back to wrestling. And you want to hear why. A very personal story from Vito LaGrasso is his real name, Big Vito, living in Central Florida and ready to get back into the squared circle. We're going to talk to him in just one moment. Also on this show, we need to talk about Tony Khan, AEW's owner. He has been all over the place for the last week because a lot has happened with him. Starting with, he takes his first real bump in an AEW ring with something with Jack Perry and Okada and the Young Bucks turning on him. Then, fast forward a day, because his family's other business is the Jacksonville Jaguars, the team of the city we're located in, and he takes a bump, and then he's seen wearing a neck brace at the NFL draft, sets the wrestling internet world on fire like he's totally living out kayfabe. Then the next day, he makes more headlines, does an interview with NFL Network describing the difference between AEW and WWE, and he has some very scandalous words about WWE, comparing them to disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. You want to hear it. We'll talk about that coming up after the interview with Big Vito. And one other thing I want you to know about. We got a contest going on here at Going Ringside for 4 front row tickets to SmackDown on May 17th in Jacksonville. On a Friday night, we're doing a contest here at Going Ringside. Next week on the May 8th edition, we're going to announce the winner of the SmackDown tickets contest. If you want to enter, first off, if you're in Jacksonville, you know this process. You go to my TV station's website, news4jax.com. You have to be an insider, sign up with your email address, and then you can enter the contest to win. If you don't live in Jacksonville, but you might want to come to North Florida for this event, you can sign up too. You don't need to be in the area. If you want to win the tickets, our website is news4jax.com. Signing up for an insider on the website is really easy. All you need is an email address. You can enter to win as well. Once again, we'll be announcing the winners next week here on Going Ringside. 4 ringside tickets to the May 17th SmackDown. So don't miss out on that. And we don't want to miss out on that because it's a great prize. We're so excited to partner with WWE on this event. Now let's get to what we're here to talk about. Big Vito, Vito LaGrasso. You might remember him if you've watched wrestling for a while. He was a guy that's been around since really the early 90s, but he really started to become well known when he went to ECW in the late 90s, right at the peak of the Monday Night Wars, Attitude Era, all that stuff. In 98, 99, he goes in and he has this gimmick of being this Italian guy, which is truly what he is, and he really did it well. And then he spends his time in ECW, then goes over to WCW, continuing with it as part of the Mama Lukes with Johnny the Bull, one of the strongest guys ever. They have a great run there. He does some work with TNA, and then he goes to WWE 05 to 07. So 05 to 07, he's right there in the era of people like The Rock. It is at the end of his initial run in WWE. Cena's becoming popular. Batista is exploding. Evolution, all that great time that we remember, and he's right in the middle of it. He starts the gimmick where he's this Italian kind of mafia character, and then all of a sudden he starts wearing dresses to the ring. Certainly very unique back in the day for Big Vito. Anyway, he's for the most part been out of wrestling for quite a while, but he's coming back. Big Vito, Vito LaGrasso, lives in Central Florida, and life has reared his ugly head. His wife has had health issues. He needs to support her, and the best way he can think of to do that is to come back to the wrestling world. He's in shape. He's ready to go. He's looking for a promoter to take him on, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So let's get to it. Here is our interview with Big Vito. You knew him in WWE, WCW, ECW, and TNA. He's been all over the wrestling landscape, and he's looking to get back in. He also has a special message for AEW and Tony Khan, if you're listening. So let's get to it. Here's our interview with Big Vito. Well, we're excited to be joined now by the legend himself, Big Vito. Big Vito, thanks for joining us today.
How are you doing, Scott? How's everything? How's everybody in Jacksonville? I hope you're enjoying the beach, enjoying some good times, some good drinks, your family, and just about everything you could do in Jacksonville. Go ahead, man. You look like you got a great tan. You've been having a good time.
I've been trying. Now, you are not far from us. You're down here in Florida as well. Talk to me about what you've been up to.
Well, I tell you what, life has given you different avenues of what you do. Everybody knows I've been taking care of my wife for the past 10 years. We just had a little bit of bad health issues. She had reconstructive back surgery, so I've been dedicating myself in the house. But I've relaunched my wrestling career because I need to wrestle again. And with hospital bills and everything, that is the need right now for me to go out and wrestle to better take care of my wife. I've been training. I look good. I feel good. Would like to resume my career. My wife is on board for this. It's just like the Rocky movie when she wakes up and she goes, win. She goes, go ahead and go, because she knows I need to do this. And, it's unselfish of her. And I love her for letting me do this. You know what I mean? Because when I got married to her, I said, you come first, wrestling comes second.
Now, let me back up. When did you kind of step away from wrestling? This is a while back, wasn't it?
This is going 10 years.
Okay.
10 years she's been she got hurt on her wedding day.
Oh.
And the first 3 months of our marriage, she was in the hospital on rehabilitation, which nobody knows. And I was still wrestling full time. But I made a promise to her. I says, listen, you come first. And when sickness and health were richer and poor, sickness and health came first. And, it was the hardest thing because I had to learn how to be a husband again. I had to learn how to decompose myself from wrestling and then have to learn how to take care of a handicapped person all in one shot. I mean, a traumatic experience in the first year of marriage.
Yeah. Was it? Talk to me about, well, first off, how's your wife doing now? Could you talk to me a little about her medical journey?
She had reconstructive back surgery a couple weeks ago. And what happened was they went in and were supposed to put 2 screws in. Well, they put 2 rods, 2 discs, stem cell surgery, 4 giant screws, and they had to cut into her back muscles and reconstruct her back. So it's been tough.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with it. And, it's like the old saying, you don't leave your wingman. And I've been keeping my word and doing what I got to do at home. Because sometimes people get misguided on what's important in life. You know what I mean? It's either your career or it's your family. And before, wrestling came before everything, and I missed out on a lot of things. So when I got married this time, I said wrestling is second.
So you stepped away. Where were you last? Were you in WWE last, or were you elsewhere at the time you
I
left?
was wrestling overseas quite a bit,
Okay.
doing Rikishi's group and then doing Germany and Japan. I was in England. So I was traveling quite a bit and still wrestling on the independent circuit. And when this happened, I had closed my wrestling school in Florida. And I says, you know what, I think it's time to get married. And I just, it just comes to be like, you're a bachelor for so long. And then say, hey, am I going to live in the gym the rest of my life? Or am I going to, have a life? So 15 years of being a bachelor, and I finally said I caved. And you never seen a woman put together a marriage so fast in a month and a half. It could rock your world.
Yeah. So was it hard to be away from wrestling? Did you miss it?
Yes, I miss wrestling because I came up in the territory days, and I grew up from the old school, how wrestling was, how you trained and how you were brought into the business, those old school style. You go to wrestling school, you want to go to Japan, you want to get your Ribera jacket, you want to go wrestle for Carlos Colon, you want to go to Memphis, Tennessee, you want to go to Santo Domingo, you want to travel and do international stuff, plus do TVs for the WWF because I made it in my first year. And I also made WCW TVs in my first year, which a lot of people forget. I wrestled at Skull Von Crush for the first 8 years of my career. And I had a bunch of successful tours. And every place I went as Skull Von Crush, being, that German heel, I always got heat. I did it the right way. There were a lot of guys out there who took the time to teach me and train me and help me become a great professional wrestler and learn psychology 101 of wrestling.
So while, some may remember Skull Von Crush, I think more people remember you for Big Vito. Right. How did that transformation happen?
Well, finally, I was sitting home and, this is not to boast about anything. And like a lot of guys from back in the day, when you're too good for your own good and you just say, I had went to Japan and I pinned the greatest wrestler of all time, Misawa. You know what I mean? If anybody goes to look up, it says, you just pinned Misawa. You did this, you did that. I was cocky. I could back up what I could say. I could wrestle. But there was that thing they had say, hey, Vito, you need to eat a piece of humble pie. You need to take it back a few steps because nobody wants to play with you. I went to ECW and I talked to my guys, Taz and Tommy Dreamer, and they were working down there, and Bubba and Devon. And I told them I wanted a shot. And they said, okay, Vito, come next week. And I went through the process of earning their respect and earning their trust. And I wound up having great matches and a great run with ECW.
That's kind of where I would say you were most introduced to American audience, would you say, as that character?
As that character, yeah, because I went from Skull Von Crush and they said, hey, Vito, why don't you, just be Vito the Skull LaGrasso from Staten Island, New York, some kick-ass son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
But, the transformation was, okay, let's drop the German gimmick and let's be you. And that's when I got to go to WCW, and Vince Russo was the booker up there, and he called me and says, hey, we have a spot for you. I spoke to JJ Dillon, who worked out contract details. And then my first day, I'm wrestling for WCW with Johnny the Bull on Nitro.
Now, obviously, they remember you for the badass from New York, the Italian badass from New York. But tell me about the dresses. That's also right. What people remember. How did that come about?
Well, guys, it was a great thing because I went from the badass and I made my travels. I went to XWF. I went to TNA. I went back to Germany. I went back to Japan. And when I was in TNA, I got the call to go to WWE. I was with Nunzio with the FBI. And then they wanted to break up because they were doing an ECW revival. And they wanted to come up with a gimmick for me. So they asked me, Vito, would you wear a dress? And I said, yeah, because when the office gives you something, you take it, you run with it because that's what you do. You never know if they're going to ask you again if they have an idea and say, not him, he's going to give us a problem. I said, yeah. A lot of people ridicule me, or a lot of people made fun of me. They says, it's a rib, it's this, it's that. But if you are a worker and a true student of the game, you find a way to get the gimmick over. Everybody knows Dusty Rhodes. He had charisma, he had everything. They gave him polka dots and they said, be a common man. He got it over. Here I am wearing a dress, and I went undefeated. I was the most recognizable pro athlete for a year. Everybody, everywhere I went, they knew me. So, it was a successful gimmick. I don't think they thought it was going to be as successful as it was. And even today, I still wrestle in the dress, and people ask me to wrestle and do things in the dress. Now, that's pretty good longevity from 2006 and 7 to now.
So talk to me about your journey here getting ring ready. It sounds like you are at this point. Has it been hard to get back in ring shape?
Well, when my wife got hurt again, I says, okay, I'm going back to wrestling because I got to stay home and take care of you. Training, dieting, and I always kept fit. I became a pickleball advocate, so pickleball has been good, and that's the big Florida sport here. But you know what? I was playing 3 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, hitting the gym after that. So my cardio is good. And the exercises I've been doing, that's where I never forgot my wrestling exercises and keeping shape, keeping lean, my diet, health, nutrition, skin, teeth whitening. I've always been, one of these neat people, drinking, you have a couple of drinks on the weekend, you do your stuff. And I've been a health fanatic, I always take care of myself, but trying to turn it up a notch. And when the time comes when I have to turn it on full speed, I know I could do it because I'm right there. I'm still, my clothes are good. My body's good. It's lean. Am I going to be the bull from 20 years ago that could run through a stair wall? I don't know. But I'm still going to be capable of putting on a good show and having good matches and doing my thing.
I want to talk about your options wrestling-wise, because you're looking for a place to go. You're looking for a place you can make money. So I'm going to start where we're based right now in Jacksonville, the headquarters of AEW. We've talked a little before the interview that, you're interested in AEW. Talk to me about that.
AEW. There are a lot of people out there who have a lot of criticism about AEW. Anytime, as you know, Scott, when you start a business, right, the worst thing you could do is duplicate what someone else is doing. You have to have a vision. Everybody has a vision. Tony Khan has a vision, and he wants to run his ship this way and do this, this, and this because it's his life, it's his baby. There are a lot of people out there who spread negativity, but for me, I look at it as a business standpoint. He's doing his thing the way he wants. Now, I would love to wrestle for AEW. Now they have a lot of jobs open right now. They need talent. I could be talent. They have trainers positions. I could be a trainer. They have agent positions. Tony Khan, if you're listening out there, and if the boys in the back are listening, I'm available. I'd like to work for AEW. I have responsibilities at home, and just like everybody else, you need a job. But that just doesn't stop for AEW. This just goes to all wrestling companies out there because I want to get back in the game. I have almost 4 decades of experience. I've come through the territories. I've, been groomed by some of the best wrestlers in the world, and I'd like to share that knowledge to enhance some young guys who want to make it as far as I did and have success at all levels of wrestling.
So we spoke of AEW, obviously. And there's other options. There's your WWE in different levels. There's Ring of Honor. There's TNA. There's Japan. Are you looking at other options like that, if they're available?
I have been in contact with Italy. I've been in contact with Germany, the UK. I've been in contact with a lot of different people. My name is in the hat. I'm available to do whatever. I'm just waiting for the right offer so I could sign my name and go to work. That's all I want to do. If you ask me if I want to travel here, and here for all these different companies, if I have to do it, I do it. But I've always been a company guy. I like to work for one company, have a schedule, do my thing. And it's not far-fetched. I'm not silly. I'm not being irrational about what I can accomplish in this time. Everybody thinks they can last another 10, 15 years. Hey, I'm good if I get 2 or 3 years out of this body, and then say, hey, I'm good. I'd like to be an agent or, a trainer because I can help these young guys and I can share experiences. Working on the back end in the back would be a plus because I could share my knowledge, sit there, take notes, and learn from some of the guys who helped train me because I know there's still some veterans out there who could teach me some tricks of the trade. And in this business, you're always willing to learn something.
What are your thoughts on where the wrestling business is now? I mean, for the first time in the past 5 years, WWE has legitimate competition in AEW. Right. WWE is a whole new ballgame, merging with UFC, The Rock's back. I mean, what are kind of your thoughts on where the wrestling world is right now?
Wrestling world, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's got their heroes. Everything is good because both companies are doing business, right? You talk about TKO taking over the WWE and not having any of the McMahons in the office, and that's been a McMahon, household name for so many years. It's strange not to see them on the WrestleMania card.
Were you shocked by that news that came out 3-4 months ago?
Was I shocked? At the merger? No, because I figured the merger was going to happen because they were going to sell. Of so-called allegations that happened, guys, it is what it is. I wasn't there for any of that, you know what I mean? And I never seen any of that kind of stuff. As far as Vince McMahon treating me one-on-one personally, he always treated me with respect. So I can't say nothing bad about the man. And the same goes for Mrs. McMahon and Stephanie, and Shane. They all treated me with respect. They never disrespected me in any way. And I don't have any ill feelings towards anybody. If there was a job to be had, hey, great. I'd like to contribute and be part of the team, anybody's team.
So what are your thoughts on The Rock coming back? The Rock has been making a lot of headlines in the last few months.
I didn't put on this jacket and tie just so I could sit here and talk about The Rock. We're talking about big Vito LaGrasso. My arch enemy is The Rock. You know what I mean? People compare, arch enemy, I'm telling you, people compare us the way we look. Who's more handsome, Big Vito or The Rock? I think it's great that he's back in the wrestling business. He made it come up. He's on the rise. He was always a great entertainer. He was always a great wrestler. He's good on the stick. I think it's a great thing for wrestling to have this excitement. You don't know how the bloodline is going to run. You don't know how it's going to turn out, but you turn it on your channel. Just like in AEW, you turn it on your channel to see when MJF is going to come back, who's leaving, who's coming, when is Chris Jericho going to sing another song, when is all these guys going to come back. That's the exciting thing about wrestling. You never know what's going to happen. So if you're asking me if it's an exciting time again, of course it is. Is it the Nitro Wars like back in the day when you had all the greatest wrestlers of all time, competing and battling? No, it's not that. And they all talk about the viewers. As you know, I'm sure you have your ups and downs with viewers, but you have your steady people who watch your product. And if you have steady people watching, you're not losing anybody. You might not gain 5 million because, as you know, Scott, the ratings, remember back in the day, it was 4 million and 2 million and 3 million and 1 million. It's not like that no more for some reason because there's so many other products out there, so many other projects, you don't know what to watch, and let's talk about Mike Tyson coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is going to be the biggest gate that they ever pulled for an event.
Him versus Jake Paul, you think is the biggest gate ever?
But I think the bigger gate is going to be, now this is my prediction, people. Mike Tyson makes a good show and gets rid of this kid. Say they go to Saudi Arabia and Tyson Fury, that boxing heavyweight champion, says, all right, Mike, let's see how good you really are. Here's $50 million. Fight me. Now, Mike Tyson has a chance to make history and say, hey, I'm going to be the youngest and oldest heavyweight champion in the world. He's got nothing to lose, but money to gain. And in Saudi Arabia, that's a lot of money. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to draw a big crowd?
I think this summer will. I just honestly don't know. Mike looks as badass as ever, but I don't know. there's still age there. So I don't know. I don't know how he'll do against Jake Paul. I mean, everyone assumes Tyson's going to crush him, but we'll know when we see it.
You know, the one thing about age, guys, you bring it up. If you let age get in your way of doing what you want, you would never accomplish anything. And if you don't have goals in life, what do you have? I have my goals. I want to end my career the way I want to end it. I want to go out there fighting, and when I want to say I had enough, I want to call it on my dime, not on somebody else saying you're old or you can't do this or you're not doing that. And let's be honest, I was never the type of guy to embarrass myself, to go humiliate myself or go get a payday just so I could say, hey, I'm a pro wrestler. If I couldn't be Big Vito or I couldn't be Vito LaGrasso, I wouldn't do it. If I didn't look good, if I didn't feel good, and if I wasn't confident in my ability, I wouldn't do it. A lot of guys don't have that. Mike Tyson still thinks he could do it. I'm behind him. I still think I can go wrestle against the best in the world. Hey, yeah, I could do it. What's the age? What's age? Age is a number.
And as far as your wife, how does she feel about all this? You going back on the road? Is this something she's, excited about? Because in your marriage, as you just told me, you've never lived with, life on the road.
Here's what my wife told me, guys, and this is something that's real special. I gave up my career for her, and she's been going through all this stuff. So I said, listen, I got to go back to wrestling because this is the only way we're going to make it. I can't work a regular job. She goes, I want you to go. My wife runs our social media. She's on there posting videos, posting ads, making our stuff. She's the one behind the scenes posting everything so I can go back and end this the way I want. She's behind me 100%. That's her gift back to me. Hey, do I do the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the doctor's appointments, the hospital runs, taking care of the dog, taking care of the house, doing
the stuff that no one sees?
But that's the job you do, and that's what that. And the one thing I want, hey, we're limited on going out because you can't go out. Do I go out by myself? I always say married men don't belong in clubs. And that's the truth because you get in trouble, especially when you're handsome like this. But it's another story. But when you get what I'm talking about is, when you're dedicated and your partner sees you put out and they want to give back, maybe they can't walk, maybe they can't go dance, maybe they can't, but they can sit behind a computer because they're knowledgeable and whizzy, and they can say, okay, I'm going to help you achieve your dream. Because if I'm happy, she's happy. I would like nothing better than go back to the major leagues and go back to the major companies and be part of something. And then I could be at peace with myself. When the Rocky says he still has something burning inside, and it's the truth. I still have it burning inside me. I wouldn't be killing myself every day. I wouldn't be dieting every day. I wouldn't be doing all this if it didn't burn inside me.
Well, Big Vito LaGrasso, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me, Scott. It was a pleasure to be part of your team. Jacksonville, I hope to see you soon. Jacksonville, I'm coming after you. Check out Big Vito at bigvito.com. Guys, we got a lot of good stuff. If you're a promoter out there and you're looking for good talent, you're looking for help, call me. I'm available.
Big Vito, thanks. So Big Vito is back. If you know of a promoter who's hiring, he had some words for Tony Khan specifically. He's ready to get to work, and he's hoping a promoter will sign him on and he can get back to the industry that made him famous so many years ago. So he says he's ready to go. We'll see where Big Vito goes from here. We will, of course, be watching and checking with him down the road. So the other story today I wanted to focus on is what the wrestling world's been just kind of fixated on the last week, and people are divided over it. I understand that. But it was some stuff that we never quite thought would really happen. It's really a sign that kayfabe, in some respects, is still alive, and the war between AEW and WWE isn't really ending anytime soon. That would be because of some of the things Tony Khan did. So last Wednesday on Dynamite, Tony Khan is attacked by Jack Perry, by the Young Bucks, the guys he started the company with, by Okada. And they turn on him and they go in the ring, they injure him. His dad, who I've said on the Going Ringside TikTok and Instagram channel, is the true, final boss of AEW. That would be Shad Khan, who really owns all of it. The guy who's worth about $12+ billion is even in the ring. It was the first time we saw his dad actually in the ring, concerned when his son was injured in the squared circle in AEW. Why it matters is because the next night at the NFL draft, because the Khans also own the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were in Jacksonville for both AEW and for the night of the draft. And I woke up the next morning and didn't realize I thought I was watching Bobby Heenan from the 1980s. Tony Khan had the old school neck brace on. We don't see the old school neck brace much more anymore in wrestling, but Tony has brought it back. So I'm like, oh my God, this really happened. So I got on the @Going Ringside Instagram channel to talk about that. And then what he did the next day when he's being interviewed by the NFL Network. They're asking, what's the deal with his neck brace? Tell us about AEW. He starts comparing AEW and WWE and compares them to disgraced media mogul Harvey Weinstein, who's been accused of all sort of sexual impropriety. Listen to these two things that I uploaded this past week to the @Going Ringside Instagram channel. Just some fascinating stuff with AEW owner Tony Khan. Hey, I'm Scott Johnson, host of the Going Ringside podcast. The Tony Khan neck brace may be one of the most brilliant wrestling things I've seen in years. It makes me think of Bobby Heenan wearing a neck brace, it seems like, for half of the 1980s. It's old school wrestling at its best because he was beat up the other night on AEW. Why it's so smart? He just exposed AEW to the biggest audience he could ever theoretically get it to. The NFL audience watching the draft, mostly diehards who are going to watch that, guys who may be open more to a pro wrestling product. And keep in mind, AEW struggles with something WWE doesn't. They have brand awareness issues. They need people to know about their product and understand what it is. This gets the sports world, the NFL world, broader than an AEW audience talking about their product and maybe checking it out, wondering, why is Tony Khan wearing a neck brace? Maybe I should Google that and find out. This is brilliant. Hey, I'm Scott Johnson, host of the Going Ringside podcast. Inflammatory words by AEW owner Tony Khan, calling WWE the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling on the NFL Network in an interview wearing that neck brace he's been wearing, selling the injury from this past Wednesday at Dynamite, says AEW's like the Pepsi of pro wrestling and WWE's like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling, obviously taking a shot at the Vince McMahon allegations, making it very real. That is a scandalous phrase to use, saying that his competition, World Wrestling Entertainment, is the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. So I immediately got on with those just because it was just too juicy to pass up, you know. So I immediately got on. Once again, give us a follow at Going Ringside on both TikTok and Instagram, where I'm putting exclusive content there every day, like stuff like that. And so first, on the neck brace, a lot of people were saying, well, you're not selling it very well because you're looking like this. I'm not going to nitpick. I just think the fact that he was wearing the neck brace was kind of cool. It made me think of the 1980s. I know Bobby Heenan wasn't always like this. You know, sometimes Bobby Heenan wouldn't sell it too well, but he'd always have that neck brace on. JBL, I remember, with a much more medical device came in and he couldn't turn his head. Tony turned his head at the draft. I don't really care. I just thought it was funny he was wearing the neck brace. But then when he calls WWE the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling, I'm like, it's a little spicy. A lot of people on the @Going Ringside TikTok channel are questioning, could WWE sue? I don't think that would be realistic. You know, you have the ability to, you know, make criticisms of large publicly traded companies. It's kind of a hard lawsuit to file, but it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion, so I wanted to have that discussion. So I brought on John Brecko with Hot Tag Takes podcast. They do a lot of exclusive stuff every week. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I want to talk to John a little about, you know, this Tony Khan that we've seen in the last week. Taking a bump, wearing a neck brace, saying some things about WWE that were extremely controversial. So we wanted to break that down, get his take on it. And here's John Brecko. Well, we're excited to be joined now by John Brecko with the Hot Tags Take podcast. John, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. How you doing? How's the life over there?
I'm doing good. Tell me all about the show, where people can find it, how they can tune in and listen.
So everybody can tune in on YouTube. We go live on YouTube. Our regular show is Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do record on Mondays and Wednesdays as well, and we do daily shorts for everybody that wants to, hear a joke. Because both me and my co-hosts are also stand-up comedians. So sometimes I put wrestling shorts together. Sometimes I put other sports shorts together. I actually did a Dragon Ball Z one recently as well. So there's always stuff going on the channel, including the regular shows and stuff we record otherwise. So go subscribe to us on YouTube. We just passed 1,000 subscribers this past Thursday. We're around 1,070 something now. Definitely make sure you check out the shorts and check out the shows. We got a lot of great content up there. And some of these shows are wild, man. People would love to check this out.
I've been on the show. It was a lot of fun. And I want to get to the reason you're here today, and that's to discuss Tony Khan's very interesting week. And I want to go it in order because it's just been unique for Tony Khan. Let's first talk about him. Like, he's never really gotten involved. I mean, he does interviews and does the press conferences, but he's never directly been involved like we would see Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff over the years. But Tony's never really been beat up before.
Yeah. I mean, that was the first time we really saw him got beat up. And you could even hear Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer talking about his selling and laughing about it. And what I really hope for AEW is that it starts to bring it back into a positive light. Although he made some comments that we'll get to where I don't know if we're going to be seeing that, but I actually quite like the angle. I think it's interesting bringing Jack Perry back as the scapegoat. I think might do wonders for him. So I do want to see where the angle goes. I am interested. I was a little bit turned off by some of the other things we'll talk about, but I am interested in the angle 100%. And I think if they hit this angle just right, this could do amazing things for Jack Perry as well as AEW.
Before we get to the neck brace, I want to get your opinion on some of this AEW stuff. So if you get on wrestling chat rooms, there's so many people just bash AEW. It's crap. It's crap. It's crap. I don't know if that's the real world or not. I don't know if that's like an internet echo chamber or if that's what fans really think. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the problem currently is that, we had the CM Punk interview, and then Tony Khan was a little bit butthurt about it. Didn't really like what CM Punk had to say and talked about airing the footage. Then we got the footage, and it was exactly what CM Punk had already said. All you did was confirm what CM Punk already talked about all on his own. So it put AEW in a bad light. It made Tony Khan look petty, and people were very turned off by it. I was very turned off by it. And also, I think it ruined a really good Will Ospreay promo where he's talking about grinding on the boss's daughter. Nobody would have had anything bad to say about that promo if it didn't come right after the footage. And I think it put that promo in a bad light, and I think it put AEW in a bad light. And what I'm hoping, basically kind of what I said before to bring it full circle, is that this starts to put AEW back in a positive light and people start to get interested. And if you look at the numbers for AEW's most recent pay-per-view, Dynasty, they had one of their lowest gates in company history. Barely over 6,000 tickets sold, barely over $400,000 at the gate. And, you're hoping that they could shake things up a little bit. And Tony Khan waiting 5 years to get involved might actually be a good thing. We talk about the way Vince McMahon's gotten involved. He didn't get involved at all until he was in wrestling for about 30 years.
Yeah, so, with Austin and stuff and Bret Hart and all those, sure. So Tony shows up the next day, which I personally loved because I thought it was old school kayfabe, in the old school big bulky neck brace at the NFL draft. I woke up the next morning because I didn't stay up to watch the draft, and I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, he's going through with kayfabe here. What are your thoughts on the neck brace usage?
I love it. I absolutely love the neck brace. I think that's a great idea. And what I will commend AEW for doing, which I don't think they've gotten enough credit for in the past, they take kayfabe very seriously and they bring it to real life. MJF has done that in the past with AEW as well. And Tony Khan is here doing it now. So the fact that, kayfabe is being brought to real life, and we can all have just a blast with it. I think it's a wonderful idea. I love it. And I love the fact that he was at the actual NFL draft making picks with the neck brace on. There was an interview that their first round draft pick did. He looked a little bit confused, looked like a deer in headlights, didn't look like he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was a good sport, and it just made it fun. It made the NFL draft fun, gave it a little something extra, and those are the kind of things that do good for AEW and do good for wrestling.
So we have Tony Khan get beat up in the ring, Tony Khan in a neck brace on the NFL draft. Then the next day, he makes a third headline doing an interview with the NFL Network, still in the neck brace. He's asked about WWE and AEW comparisons, which before I get to his comment, I do want to say, I think utilizing the NFL Network to bring awareness to his product was good, because I don't think people know AEW as well as they know. Everyone knows WWE. Not many people know what AEW is unless you're a diehard.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the fact that he's using that is genius. I think the fact that he's using his connections, that's something anybody would do. Anybody that has any sort of business, you're going to use the tools you have at your disposal to be able to help your business and be able to help your product grow and to be able to put more eyes on yourself. That's something anybody would do. WWE appears on sports talk shows all the time. Cody Rhodes was doing interviews all over the place. So was Roman Reigns, Pat McAfee, First Take, you name it. I mean, anybody that is trying to get eyes on their product is going to use whatever network they can to do that. And Tony Khan having the personal connection in the NFL with Shad Khan being the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, I think Tony Khan did what any smart business owner would have done in taking that interview. Comments are a different story.
Let's get to what he says. So he's asked by the interviewer, and I've only watched the clip, I haven't watched the full segment, but about, AEW, WWE, and he says, we're kind of like the Pepsi, maybe implying that WWE is the Coke, but that's not what he says. Then he says WWE is the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. Obviously a shot at the McMahon scandal and the lawsuit filed against McMahon and WWE. Your thoughts on that very, scandalous comment?
It did make me laugh. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It did. I don't think the timing of it was very good. I think coming off of, 2 weeks ago, but the comment did make me laugh. The real problem I have here is that if you're going to compare your product to soda, you should compare it to Dr. Pepper. That's the issue I have. Yeah. It's not about Coke or Pepsi. It's about Dr. Pepper. And so many people get that wrong, and I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate all these slights at Dr. Pepper, and people need to check themselves. But, I mean, as far as Tony Khan's comments go, I mean, as far as, Vince McMahon's concerned, they're warranted. You can't defend Vince McMahon. It's what he did was evil. It's indefensible. And
what he's accused of, and he's still gonna, he's pleading he didn't do it, and obviously going to be settled in court. But yeah, go ahead.
That's true. But I mean, that's why he's kind of disgraced in the wrestling world now, especially if it's true. And I think the comments themselves, as far as Vince McMahon is concerned, are warranted. And I mean, the evil juggernaut part, I mean, it does feel like WWE is trying to create a different culture and trying to separate themselves from that, which is all WWE can really do. I mean,
and literally in the past 24 hours of us sitting here talking, there's been reports out Vince has sold all his WWE stock. It's gone. I've analyzed this at Going Ringside. We think it may have something to do with the lawsuit, maybe some sort of agreement. We don't know. Yeah. But do you think WWE is able to get that just thing off their back with McMahon? Because it's going to still play out for the next several months once this goes to court or settles or whatever happens, I mean, it's a black eye they took.
I mean, it's still going to be in the back of everybody's mind, whether he's part of the company or not. I mean, I think it might soften the blow somewhat, but everybody remembers Vince McMahon for taking WWE and making it the national company, making it, the must-watch company in America with WrestleMania, and how he's been able to grow it over the years from going into, larger and larger stadiums to now having all kinds of pay-per-views in different countries. Backlash is going to be in France. Elimination Chamber before that was in Australia. You had the Backlash last year in Puerto Rico. Just, they're going all over the place now, and it's kind of built from this. And Vince McMahon set the foundation for that company. And, no matter how everything turns out, WWE is going to feel the blow to an extent, because Vince McMahon was part of that company for so long, that his name is kind of synonymous with it, whether you separate themselves from it or not. Again, I think it'll soften the blow, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of a blow, as you said, a black eye, regardless. That WWE is going to have to move past. And I think they will. I think, you've seen the culture that they've set. You've seen, the great pay-per-views that they've put on. This WrestleMania is arguably the greatest of all time. And people were saying for years that you were never going to top WrestleMania 17. So, I mean, again, I think the blow is going to be softened, but there's going to be a blow.
And lastly, because we mentioned it, the Jack Perry angle with Tony. Who do you think is babyface here? Do you think fans are going to boo Jack? Do you think they're going to start applauding him because he's involved in beating up the boss, and wrestling fans always love that?
I think they're going to start by booing him, but I think if they do the angle right, it's going to be so good that he's going to turn out babyface. I think fans are either going to completely reject it, or they're going to have a plan to keep him heel for a while. And they may not be able to keep that plan as long as, they might have intended. I think it's going to be one or the other. But either way, I think if they are able to kind of garner attention from it, and they're able to, push Jack Perry through the roof, people are buying scapegoat t-shirts. I mean, who else is going to take the title from Swerve Strickland but Jack Perry if they really push this guy through the roof? Again, we got to see how this angle turns out. But, I am interested. I do want to see where it goes. And it did bring me back a little bit because, again, I was turned off by the footage. I think a lot of fans were. And I think the timing of Tony Khan choosing to get involved, choosing to go into this angle, comments, put aside, I think this was a good idea.
Well, John Brecco, one more time on where people can find your show.
Hot Tag Takes. Go look for the show on YouTube. We post all our shorts there, including all of our shorts. Just past 1,000 subscribers. Help us get to 2,000. Let's do it.
Thanks again, John, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank John for coming on the show today, along with our other guest, Big Vito, who's back in the wrestling world. And thank you for joining us today. And once again, next week on the May 8th episode, we're going to be announcing the winner of the SmackDown tickets contest. 4 people can get, or you'll get 4 tickets if you win. I'll be announcing the winner next week. Once again, go to our TV station's website, which is news4jax.com. You have to do what's called sign up to be an insider. All you need is an email address. Then you can sign up for the contest. You may win 4 front row seats to SmackDown May 17th in Jacksonville. So thanks for joining us today for another episode of Going Ringside. We'll see you back here next week.
This has been Going Ringside with the local station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on New Sport Jax Plus, as well as the New Sport Jax YouTube channel.